If you get a flat tire, removing the rear wheel on a dynamic chainless bicycle is easy, and you just need two tools, a screwdriver and a wrench. Either a 15mm wrench or an adjustable wrench works great. The first thing I like to recommend is to go up and put your bike into fourth gear. That'll come in handy later on when you go to inspect the gearing after the wheel is changed. First, I like to disconnect the brakes. And you do this by disconnecting the brake cable from the swing arm on the top of the brake arm. That will release the brakes. Next, we want to remove the black dust cover that covers the rear gearbox of the shaft drive. It's held in place with these two Phillips head screws. By removing these screws, it'll allow us to remove this dust cover. As you can tell, it's usually on there nice and snug. So if you need to, just use your screwdriver to pop it out. With the rear dust cover removed, now you simply just have to loosen the axle nuts on either side of the rear wheel, and it'll free the rear wheel from the bike frame. Now, with the rear wheel free, we can now just slide the rear wheel straight off the back of the bike. The shifter cable is still attached, and we can either work on the rear wheel with the cable attached, or we can disconnect it. And the way that's done is this shifter cable is spring-loaded on the hub. So all we do is pull down on the black cable housing where it attaches to the cable guide arm. By pulling down and removing it from the slot, we can release the cable from the rear wheel, and the rear wheel is free of the bike. And then we can go off, change our tire as needed. To put the wheel back on the bike, you'll notice that on the rear wheel, from the outside in, we have our axle nut. We have a thick gray, what's called a no-turn washer, has a squared notch that's keyed. And then there are a couple thin spacer washers. All the spacer washers will stay to the inside of this gearbox. So we just simply slide the wheel into place, and then we reattach our shifter cable. We do that by taking the pinch nut at the end of the shifter cable and sliding it into a little horseshoe-shaped slot on the rear wheel, on this piece called the cassette joint pulley, which is what actually rotates the gears inside the Shimano hub. We lay that pinch nut into the slot, and then the cable just follows a little channel. And with the wheel in place on the rear wheel, we just simply reattach our cable by pulling down. Again, it's spring-loaded. We reattach it to this cable guide arm, and the wheel's back in place. We don't have to do anything special other than that. Now we just need to tighten up our axle nuts. You'll notice that this thick gray no-turn washer is keyed, as I mentioned, and there's a matched cutout on the housing of the rear gearbox. And when you line that up, that is going to align all of your gears, so you really can't mess anything up. Now we just simply tighten up this axle nut till it's nice and snug. As you can see, sometimes here I like to put a little forward pressure on this just to keep it nice and stable. And then just tighten up the non-drive side axle nut right where it is. Now that that's done, we can reattach our brakes. We take the top of the end of the brake cable, and we just loop it inside the swing arm at the top of the left brake arm, and then slide our noodle over to cover the end of the exposed cable. Now we just simply replace the dust cover in the back, and we're done with the rear wheel change. One thing I'd like to show you in the back is when the bike is in fourth gear, there are two colored indicators. And if you were to look at the bike from behind at eye level, what you'll see is these two colored indicators that line up side by side in fourth gear. And that tells you that your cable is properly tensioned and the gears are going to shift correctly. We replace our dust cover in the back and put our screws back in, and we're ready to ride.